Hey everyone. I thought this was a really cool thread that Joey did here on Twitter. It's a Controversy Deconstructed Volume 1, a Kanye West thread, and it goes through Kanye West's 2018 controversies and shows why a lot of them were overblown and what the other side of the conversation was that 99.99% in the media didn't want to have or didn't want to discuss. I actually got in arguments. I'd say a conversation, but it wasn't more of a conversation than an argument with the editor-in-chief of a prominent music outlet or music journalism outlet. Like one, if I said the name, you'd be like, oh yeah, that one. I know that one. Where he was asking what was wrong with our coverage of Kanye. Like, what are you saying was wrong with it? I was like, well, like, look at this article. The author just states all these points without considering this, or this. It's very one-sided. Or look at this review of the album. Yay, you say this, and this, but you never bring in this side of the conversation. There are people that feel this way about the album. There are people that feel this way about this. Like, you just have a very one-sided view in all this Kanye content. And his response was just the reason that the content is one-sided is one person's fault alone, and that's Kanye's. If he hadn't done or said those things or made an album that people thought wasn't good, then we wouldn't be having these conversations. And it's like, do you not see the bias there? Like, people are saying that what he said and did wasn't as bad as you're making it out to be. People are saying that the album's better than what you thought, but you're saying it's not, and you can't even fathom having that conversation, that it could be better. You just put the blame solely on Kanye. Like, what the fuck? So I really appreciated Joey putting this thread together and just being able to see, like, over the course of this channel for the last year, me doing analyses of these individual moments. That's different than being able to see them kind of collected all at once and be like, oh, well, yeah, like his views are completely different than how they were portrayed. So let's go through this, shall we? First up is maybe the biggest controversy of 2018 for Kanye, and that's regarding Trump. And you can see that this video from the T.I. conversation, when T.I. flew out to Kanye and they had like a 4-hour talk and then recorded Ye versus the People, Kanye said, half the shit Trump does, I don't agree with. Which, yeah, that immediately puts into context like, oh yeah, Kanye wasn't fully supporting Trump. He's not embracing everything Kanye does. But if you just read the media outlets, you would think that Kanye was like a hardcore, like, Ohio grandpa that only watches Fox News. And then here you have him during the Charlemagne interview when he took Charlemagne out to the 300 acres of property he has. He said, the hype of the Trump campaign and the Bernie Sanders principles, that'd be my mix when talking about Ye 2024 or Kanye as a politician. And what you see right there is that he's admiring Trump's campaign, not Trump's politics, not Trump's like as a politician, but that Trump was able to, as somebody outside of politics, galvanize enough of the country. I know how he did it, oy vey, but him being able to do it is something that Kanye was just like, yo, I want to do my version of that. Make it less build that Wall-E and more like, hey, we should all have great things and the world should be like happier and benefiting everybody. But just that's what he liked as an outsider. And that's what the next piece is. Kanye explains exactly what he likes about Donald Trump. And this is something he'd been consistent about. Donald Trump wasn't a politician. He was somebody that the politicians and everybody else actively told, you can't be president. And Trump became president. Russia. But he became president. And to Kanye, as somebody that was a young man in Chicago who wasn't supposed to like make it out of the city, right? He became one of the best producers in the world. And then he wasn't supposed to be a rapper. He was just supposed to stay a producer. But then he became one of the best rappers in the world. But then he was just supposed to stay a rapper and not become an artist. Then he did that. Then he was just supposed to be an artist but not go into fashion. Then he did that. Kanye's continuously broken into realms that he was told he shouldn't or couldn't be a part of. And he might have thought that that had a ceiling, right? And seeing Trump break through to the highest level somebody can reach in this country as not being a politician, yeah, that's inspiring to someone like Kanye. Because what can't he do if somebody like Trump was able to do that? It's a kind of a dumb comparison, but I always got A's and B's in school. I never got straight A's, and it was more just, you know, work ethic. I never cared to get straight A's. And I remember in 7th grade, there was a kid who's one of my like good friends. He's coming to my wedding, but at the time we weren't really friends, and I had like a lower view of him at the time, and he got straight A's. And I remember seeing him get straight A's, and I was like, well, if he's getting straight A's, fuck, like, I should be getting straight A's. And then I went and just kept on getting straight A's until I got bored again. But I think that's kind of the same thing on like a whole different level. But Kanye sees Trump do that and is just like, all right, like, I see what I can do now if that guy's able to do that. And then there's this video that's cool. It splits between Kanye in 2008 talking about I'm not political, and then Kim in 2018 talking about Kanye saying I'm not political. And this is her conversation with Van Jones that happened recently. And then Ray J, of all people, comes into the picture defending Kanye. But he says he has a lot of great relationships right now that could help the African American community in America. And that gets into a whole dynamic of, is it better to be on the outside saying fuck you, or is it better to ingratiate yourself and create change from the inside? There's a guy I like to refer to, Daryl Davis, I think it is, who's converted 200 Ku Klux Klan members just through conversation. He's a black man, a musician, and the first one started, he was playing piano, and this guy who was a KKK member was just like, I didn't know like your people could play piano that good. You sounded as good as this white piano player. And the musician kind of laughed and was like, who do you think that guy learned how to play piano from? He was imitating, and he named a bunch of black musicians, and the guy's like, huh, I never knew that. And just through having conversations and continuing to like be a human with this guy rather than just hating him, the guy realized how wrong his beliefs were and how wrong the KKK was, and turned in his robes. And Davis has repeated that 200 times, which is wild. But that kind of gets at a similar thing. Like Kanye, you may not be happy with the way that he did it. Like maybe this compromised his values or appeared to compromise his values, but he got into a position where he was able to have a one-on-one conversation with Trump about policies and about like the African American experience in America and what Kanye thinks could be better, which led directly to, I believe it was the First Step Act. Is that what it was called? Which was this large prison reform bill, which had been, you know, in the process of being made for years. But it was something that we don't know if Trump would have supported it, especially with all the people whispering around him that aren't the best people, right? But for Kanye to go in and have that one-on-one with Trump, what happened after that? Trump came out and was like, yeah, you know, some people may want to like strike this down, but I'm going to side with Kanye because, you know, Kanye's a great guy. And so many people were like, how did Kanye go to the White House? How dare he go to the White House? Like, what was it? T.I. and Snoop Dogg called him like an Uncle Tom, and just completely sold out his people. How disgusting. And yet he gets this bill that's going to help like thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of people in the community. So I think you can argue with the process, but it's not all evil. It's not all negative. It's not all disastrous in the way that so many other celebrities or musicians or Kanye's peers or the media made it out to be. There's another aspect to it. And it's like, okay, so was the hate Kanye received and kind of the negative media worth it in the long run because he was able to get something done that's going to benefit people for a long time? Or was there more negative to, you know, him legitimizing certain points of view or empowering like hate talk. That's still a debate, but I don't think it's as black and white as so many people saw it, especially if there's short-term versus long-term benefit. The short-term might have been this disruption and these like legitimization of beliefs that are hateful, but the long-term might be something far more beneficial for everybody. And this is something that Joey kind of brings up in the next post. Do you think saying fuck Trump all day long is going to get us anywhere with him? Do you think that having an open dialogue with him while leading with love, even though we disagree, is going to maybe get us a foot in the door? And honestly, I think we need both. Like at this stage, right? Like it can tip to where we only need people saying like, fuck you and like get out of here. But at this point, we're still in this delicate balance where like you need both. You need the good cop, you need the bad cop. And while so many people are the bad cop, you have Kanye being the good cop. That's just like, that guy's being a real asshole, right? Like, man, like, I love you, you know? I know that you mean well, so what can we do? Like, this bill, like, we should pass that, right? And Trump's like, yeah, you know what? You're nice to me. Let's pass this bill. Like, there can be benefits to love, right? And positivity rather than just the anger, but also the anger is needed. There are things to be angry about. But I don't think Kanye was justifying any of the things that people were angry about. He was just playing the game and getting something out of it for everybody. And yet people wanted to like draw and quarter him for it. So then the next part is the MAGA Hat. So Charlemagne the God, Kanye West on repurposing hate symbols so that they lose their power over that specific community. People get so caught up over intent and not content, which is actually something Kanye had talked about for a long time. All the way back in, I think he might actually have the video in here, but when, whatchamacallit, what was that? Oh God, tall guy. That 70s show, really blanking on the name. He had the show where he'd prank celebrities. Holy fucking hell, I can't believe I can't remember this. But they pranked Kanye once. Was it called Pranked? No. I'm so sorry. But they pranked Kanye once, and they had like a media crew that was there to interview him for MTV, right? And that was why they had the camera there while this was going on. And as Kanye's talking, he's saying, you know, I think the media focuses so much more on content rather than intent. And then again in like 2013, he said content rather than intent. And then in 2018, he said content rather than intent. It's been something he's been adamant about for a while, because Kanye's intent is always much better than some of the content that he says. And I think people that are close to him really know that. And that's something that Dave Chappelle says in this next comment. But you have Charlemagne kind of talking about the repurposing of iconography. And then Kanye here in this 2013 or 2014 or 15 interview, you can see he was wearing the Confederate flag. And he was saying, you know, that's not something you're supposed to do. I'm taking that symbol just like punks took the Nazi symbol and reappropriated that to lessen its power, to change its meaning. That's what I did with the Confederate flag. And that's then what he was trying to do with the Trump hat. We heard it in Ye versus the People. He said it in so many interviews that the hat doesn't mean to me what it means to everybody else. To me, it's putting on this cape. It's doing something I shouldn't be doing, but having the bravery to do it and not being scared of the backlash. It's not that he's like wearing the hat because he's like, build that wall. Ugh. He's wearing the hat because it's making him feel like he has the courage and the ability to walk through whatever fire may come in order to make the art and like have the confidence and honesty to just bring that to the rest of his life, whether it's music, fashion, everything else. And Dave Chappelle here, I don't have to agree with everything he says. I just trust him as a person of intent. And he talks about he knows Kanye's a good dude, right? And that Kanye means well. And if you talk with Kanye about these things, you wouldn't come away that he's this negative, hateful person. Y'all, Ye take the damn hat off. Kanye doesn't take the hat off. Y'all appalled by this predictable ass reaction because I actually don't know what that video says. I can't remember, but I'm sure it's something like Kanye just does what he wants. And then the 13th Amendment. Kanye West explains what he meant in regards to his abolish the 13th Amendment comment. I misspoke when I said abolish. What I meant was amend. So there was a tweet that Kanye put out saying he had the Make America Great Again hat on, which the combination was like a doozy for a lot of people. So he had the hat on, and then he said, we need to abolish the 13th Amendment. And people were just like, what? Because the 13th Amendment was the one that, whatchamacallit, freed the slaves. It was the one that ended slavery in America. But it also has a clause that says, like, you know, no man should be held a slave unless they're in prison, at which time you can do whatever the fuck you want with them. That's what it says in the Constitution. So Kanye, when he said abolish, was talking about that last part, which there was just a documentary called 13th that was taking the 13th Amendment to task, looking at how it's been exploited for a prison workforce in America that's paid cents, like pennies for every hour of work they put in, but they can be used to do whatever work anybody wants, and these private prisons are using them to do some like private labor, which kind of sucks because that's not giving back to the community. That's just cheap labor for corporations to do whatever the fuck they want without having to pay actual like workers. And then that's, you know, not getting, it's getting skills for some of the prisoners, but there's a lot of dangers and potential hazards there. So Kanye talking about that, he's just like, yeah, amend. But people were so quick to jump on the word abolish. They looked at the content rather than the intent. And the intent was always, to anybody that's being logical, oh, he's talking about prison reform, rather than like, he wants slavery to be back in America. Don't be ridiculous. So then T.I.'s take on the 13th Amendment and why it should be amended. So T.I., after Kanye tweeted that, was like, Kanye has a point. Like, the 13th Amendment kind of fucking sucks. Like, it's great. It's great. But it kind of fucking sucks. So that was that was his point. And then Van Jones talked about it as well, saying, like, you know, the 13th Amendment is troublesome. There's this aspect to it that's actually damaging. So while it did all this good, it also had this kind of poison pill in it. And then Thor Ragnarok parallels. The slaves with jobs have armed themselves. And I don't know what was said, but I'm sure it's something not kind. Then Van Jones again providing much clarity on the intention behind Kanye's statement. The 13th Amendment abolishes slavery except for the people in prison. It's as simple as that. But so many people blew it up to this absurd thing because it's Kanye. You know, you wonder if like Rihanna said it or Beyonce said it, if Ed Sheeran said it, if anybody would have confused it for a second. They would have looked at the positive intent and been like, well, of course they're talking about prison reform. But because it's Kanye, you get the negative content rather than the positive intent. More evidence about the flaw within the 13th Amendment. There it is. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as punishment for a crime where the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States. Yeah. So, like, you can't have slaves, but you fucking can if you just send them to jail. Which it makes you wonder why so many communities in America are maybe unjustifiably and in larger numbers sent to prison more so than others. Could that be abused in any way? Needs a change. Lyrics from Kanye's song New Slave and how it parallels perfectly with what he was saying in 2018. Meanwhile, the DEA teamed up with the CCA, which the Department of... Oh, God. We did an episode on this. I should know this. Teamed up with the CCA, which is a for-profit prison group. And they trying to lock people up. They trying to make new slave. See, that's that privately owned prison. Get your piece today. And there's a huge prison industrial complex that sends millions upon millions of dollars into both political parties. It's become a whole system and a whole business model for a lot of people, which just sucks. Does this get into that? Drug Enforcement Agency. Yeah. And then opening a prison seems like a pretty lucrative investment. There's an entire prison industrial... I just said this, genius. Corrections Corporations of America select financial results. So you can see from 2003 to 2008, revenue has just been going up and up and up. Yeah. And then, for example, a 1991 survey recorded by the National Institute of Drug Abuse found black people were no more likely to use drugs than a white person. However, the amount of drug arrests of blacks more than doubled from 1985 to 1989, and drug arrests of the white population only increased by 27%. Justice Department statistics report that blacks only make up 12% of the American population, but amount for 74% of those sentenced to prison for drug possession. Absurd. Absurd. And then slavery, which kicked off a lot of the controversy in 2018 for Kanye. The TMZ comment where he was trying to talk about mental prisons and the idea of being in the simulation, which is something he'd been tweeting about for a couple weeks leading up to the TMZ appearance. And as he's gearing up to talk about mental slavery, he says, you know, when you hear about slavery for 400 years, that sounds like a choice, and started trying to go back to the mental aspects of it. But people just got really, for good reason, got really hung up on like, did you just again, content versus intent, right? So here, G Herbo talks about it with Rosenberg and just explains it. Like, you know, he's talking about the fact that like at this point in time, slavery wasn't like a choice, but you have this mental like demolishing that's part of the system. And that starts to continue on beyond when slavery ended and continues into this present day, which is something Kanye talked about on All Falls Down, talked about on New Slaves, talked about in St. Pablo, that we went from whatever historical physical slavery was to this kind of economic, consumeristic form of slavery that we have now, that's all due to the mental prisons that society puts us in by telling us that we need to have these nice things. Oh, you don't have that nice car? Like, you must suck. Like, you don't have that cool necklace? Like, come on, who are you then? Like, that kind of stuff. So this was a very eloquent response and was multi-parts. I wish I was technically skilled enough to have the audio in the video. So sorry, but there's going to be a link. There's going to be a link. And then Charlemagne the God speaks out on Kanye's slavery comment. I can't give you points for what you were trying to say. So he just kind of, he agrees with the idea that like Kanye was trying to say this, right? Like he had this intent, but the contents, like you said the content, so I'm going to judge you by the content, which I kind of disagree with in general. Because if you know somebody's not as great at speaking, like not everybody could just sit in front of a camera like this and speak coherently for 23 minutes, right? But other people can. Like I happen to be in the middle ground of that, but like I mispronounce names all the time. You know my intent. I don't think you're gonna judge me all that harshly for the contents. And same thing with what Kanye said. Like you can judge him based on like the content, but I do think part of the conversation needs to be, well, what was his intent, right? And then T.I. tackles the out-of-context phrasing of slavery was a choice and provides some insight of what Kanye told him he meant while they were discussing the topic. The slavery was a choice thing wasn't saying that we volunteered to be slaves, right? But getting more into everything that we just talked about regarding the mental demolition that went on and the continued aspects of mental slavery that are part of society as a whole today. And then SNL, oh, that was a big one, right? So in case you're unfamiliar, which I don't know how you're watching this and unfamiliar, but hey, Kanye went on to Saturday Night Live, and at the end of the show during Ghost Town, he started to give a talk. But Ghost Town was happening like right before the credits. So as Kanye went to talk, the credits rolled and everybody left, but he kept speaking. And I think he talked for like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, something like that. And it was a lot more like, you can't hold me down. Like Democrats do this, like I'm on my Trump shit, that kind of stuff that everybody was just like, Kanye. So this gets to Kanye in 2004 talking about shut up and rap moments, right? Shut up and dribble, shut up and rap. I should have refreshed this. People try to box players in, and I guess for their own comfort, put them in a category so that they, they watch LeBron James for entertainment, not for his opinion, is what the person who told him to shut up and play basketball would say. And I would argue that sometimes the people that are telling these players to shut up and dribble the basketball are less informed than the players are. And Pete Davidson then on Saturday Night Live said something along the lines of, you're a musical genius, but I don't want to hear anything you have to say beyond that, right? Like, I don't care what you have to say about politics. I don't care what you have to say about the world. Just like rap. And when he said that, Colin Jost, the co-host on Weekend Updates, actually was just like, yeah, I agree with that. Or like, that's what I think. And it's just like, you would have demolished, or you were part of the group that was so upset with the right wing telling LeBron to shut up and dribble. But here you have Kanye on the other side, and you're saying shut up and rap. And how like hypocritical that is, instead of just being like, Kanye has some views, like I'd like to hear them in a different context, or I think he has like something that he's trying to say, or just I disagree, but not shut up and rap. Like, and then just a shout out to Pete. I also like Pete too. That was a stupid moment, but we're all capable of those, definitely. And then Kim's take on Kanye's speech on Saturday Night Live. I listened to him and afterward let him know I could help him communicate that a little bit better. And she said a few times, like, he's not the best communicator. He's not the best public speaker. Like, we'll have conversations at home. And I'm like, yeah, that all makes sense. And then he'll go out and give a talk about it, and it's nothing like what he was saying. And I'm like, why'd you say it that way? And he's like, So she's been working with him on his communication, but she also, again, knows the intent if the content doesn't always match up correctly. And I think that's the thing, like a lot of Kanye fans, we can understand the intent because we know so much about where Kanye's come from, what he said before. You can kind of piece it together. But so many people don't know that, so they have no perspective on the intent. They just view Kanye from headlines as being this egotistical, maniacal monster who made a song called I Am a God, where they think he was actually like 100% in belief that he's this like on the level of Jesus figure, rather than the hyperbolic nature of that song and the irony of that song that's in there, that he's saying he's a god but can't get croissants, can't get his car out of the garage, has to rely on these people. So he's actually powerless and these people aren't doing anything for him. Like, they don't get that. They only see the ego. So then they completely believe the content without any question of the intent. And then there's a link to the speech. A YouTube channel has the full thing, so you'll be able to watch that. And then Van Jones dives in on why he disagrees that Kanye did the rant for clout. I guess that was a whole conversation. That's been a whole weird thing of 2018, people saying that Kanye is just trying for clout, he's just trying for attention, like he's just trying to sell stuff, which I don't think is entirely the case. Like, Kanye's always had meaningful purpose to what he says and does. Yes, a lot of him speaking out coincides with when he's releasing an album or when there's a project, but that doesn't mean that he doesn't believe what he's saying or that he wouldn't talk about it on another time. It's just if he's solely focused on work, as most artists are, then when he's going to talk is going to be when he's finished with work. And that just usually happens when the album's about to come out. And then you move on to other things. But you have this window where you're speaking up and speaking out. But Kanye's been pretty consistent on his points. And I don't think he's necessarily just saying shit just to say shit because it's getting attention, right? Like Soulja Boy, and what Soulja Boy's been doing this last like week, now that's going for clout, that's going for attention, that's just saying shit to raise like your media profile. Like, that's a whole game. That's not like this thing that Soulja Boy is like passionate about. It's just PR. Like, I would say that's the difference. And then an art break. I don't know if this is Joey's art, but let's look at it, you know? Joey put in some hard work. Ooh. Okay. Art break over. The White House and Ye. All right. I think we're getting near the end. But Kanye did speak on prison reform and mental health in the White House. It was not just a rant. So this was actually nice. This was just a stay tuned, a Snapchat channel. So most of the main media outlets didn't talk about Kanye's like topics at all. They were just like, he ranted in the White House. He spoke for 20 minutes. Trump was weirded out. Rather than being like Kanye spoke on education, prison reform, like revitalizing Chicago, like bringing jobs back to America, like very progressive talking points. But yet a Snapchat account that does news can actually explain that Kanye touched on serious issues. Kanye's embarrassing us was a talking point. So Kanye got in front of Trump and asked for prison reform, tax breaks to bring factory jobs back to America and to put them in Chicago, more mental health institutions, more art programs, no stop and frisk in Chicago, better educational programs, and to free Larry Hoover, and everybody's still mad. There's no pleasing people. Siding with Kanye West, Trump says he'll overrule Jeff Sessions on prison reform. There we go. President Trump said he was willing to overrule the Attorney General on prison reform. If he doesn't agree, Jeff Sessions, then he gets overruled by me because I make the decision. He doesn't. There has to be a reform. It's very unfair to African Americans. It's very unfair to everybody, and it's also very costly. The swipe at Sessions followed praise showered on rapper Kanye West. The two will meet at the White House later today for the signing of the Music Modernization Act legislation, which turns over more royalty revenues to musicians and artists. Trump and West will have lunch to discuss prison reform, among other topics. Yeah. At least the man is trying to help and spreading love while doing it. And almost done. 2018 albums. He had a good-ass 2018 musically, too. Yes, he did. Ye flopped this year. Yeah, Ye flopped this year. Who's checking for Kanye in 2018? All 5 albums debuted in the top 20 on Billboard. With, what? Ye at 1, Kids See Ghosts at 2, Daytona at 3, Nas was at 5, and I think Teyana's was at 15 or 18. Kanye now has 48 top 40 hits on the Billboard Hot 100. Yikes, All Mine, Ghost Town, Would It Leave, and Violent Crimes, which is a benefit of having like a 20-minute album. They can be played a bunch of times, which, if you're like me, you listen to that album like 100 times in the first 3 days that it was out. Kanye earns 8th #1 album on Billboard. In fact, Kanye's Yandhi does not debut at #1. It will be his first album since The College Dropout, which debuted and peaked at #2 to not reach #1. Yeah. If only it had come out, but maybe soon. Hopefully soon. He called every single album he made last year superhero rehabilitation. #1 album, Ye, #1 rap album, Daytona, and the #2 deserving of #1 classic, Kids See Ghosts. So he said, I didn't finish it. A person from our management staff had suggested because the album is so good, I started incorporating, so this is about Yandhi. I started incorporating sounds that you've never heard before and pushing and having concepts that people don't talk about. We have concepts talking about body shaming and women being looked down upon for how many people they slept with. It's just a full Ye album. Those 5 albums that I dropped earlier were like superhero rehabilitation, and now the alien Ye is like fully back in mode. Off of medication, working out, breathing as much fresh air as possible, thinking, doing, being himself. When I say being myself, that doesn't mean I'm being Donald Trump. It means I'm being me, and I'm punk, and I can wear whatever I want because I'm a god. This t-shirt don't make me. This is how I look at this time on this planet. Other times maybe had on a robe, had a robe on. Next time, maybe it's like a full electrical suit. Fucking love Kanye. Now the alien Ye is like fully back in mode. It reminds me of when was talking about people that did it get him. He's like, I will fucking laser you with fucking alien eyes, right? So alien Ye, yeah. Yeah, easily producer of the year. Daytona, Ye, Kids See Ghosts, Nazir, KTSE. Up for Best Rock Song at the Grammys. And then he has produced literally 4 top 5 albums of the year. His was okay, Kids See Ghosts was great, and Daytona has to be Album of the Year. Y'all are literally just talking. This has been a great year for Kanye. Yeah. And I think I've seen so much already in 2019, people being like, oh, hey, I went back and listened to Ye. This album's really fucking good. I didn't think so at the time, but like, whoa, it's already happening. I said it the day the album came out that people are going to be iffy on it, but eventually, as time passes, more and more people are going to say this is a masterpiece, just like every other Kanye album. And it's starting to happen, which makes me so happy. I hope you have the same experience if you were doubting it. And if you have been doubting it, listen to our podcast episodes on it. They're really good, and I think they'll make you appreciate it. And then just a few bonus points. So that is that for this. And then I think it just added on a little more. There was this article from back in January, February, March, April, May, from back in May. It said 5 black scholars respond to Kanye West's remarks on slavery, Trump, and Obama. And the first one they talked with is Jeffrey McCune, who you may remember if you watched yesterday's video. Jeffrey teaches at Washington University and taught the class The Politics of Kanye West, Black Genius, and Sonic Aesthetics. And Jeffrey had been on the show back in 2018 before that class. We did a story with him. Huge Kanye fan, really knowledgeable about Kanye. And you can see how his response differs from, Davies at Cornell, Hill at University of Iowa, Thomas from the University of Massachusetts, and Bogues from Rhode Island. Brown? Oh, yeah. Teaches at Brown. Little-known university called Brown. But I would guess that Jeffrey's the most knowledgeable about Kanye through this. And Jeffrey's answer is, to me, not the correct one, but the most nuanced, as the rest only see the superficiality, the content of what Kanye said, where Jeff's the only one that saw the intent. So Jeffrey said, the enigma, which has been Kanye West for the last decade, has never made itself user-friendly or a product easily understood or digested by the passerby. I am probably one of the few people who think that the large majority of Kanye's rants make sense at the core, revealing an element of profound thought usually relegated to society's philosophical academic types. This slavery moment, as it will be called, is not one such genius moment. Fair. Even in his more erratic or spastic moments, he has never made such a nonsensical misstep. In my opinion, there was no way that Kanye West, who has illustrated as much intelligence and wit, truly thought slavery was a choice. There was no period of slavery where the choice to be mentally free would have been viable. It was a grave sight of unfreedom and violence. It was freeing of the slaves in law, emancipation, which offered them a sense of freedom. But many had difficulty imagining freedom after years of captivity and dehumanization. Kanye seems to be asking us to free our minds, to release ourselves of the captured mind. This is consistent with Kanye over the last decade. Kanye's whole musical catalog, the body of work where musical artists instill their most consistent messages, has negated slavery was a choice. From New Slaves to Ultralight Beam, Kanye has given us no reason to see this rhetorical slip as anything other than a really bad interview moment gone viral. Just very well said and very understanding of Kanye's content and intent and what he probably meant to say versus what was said. And Kanye really confirmed a lot of that in future dialogue, as we saw in the thread from Joey. So shout out to Joey, shout out to Jeff. And actually, on yesterday's video, I mentioned that it would be great to go and be part of the class that Jeff's teaching this year at WashU, and actually started talking with him today via Twitter. but DMing about coming to a class. So that'd be cool. Hopefully we'd videotape it and be able to put it up on the channel so you'd all be able to see that experience. It would be kind of a live show. So hopefully we get to do that, but it'd probably be like March, April sometime, but yeah, I'm excited. And also our story on Nino Blue is out. This is kind of the last thing. Come on. All right, well, we're not gonna get the page to load. So Nino Blue, you might remember from whatchamacallit, an Instagram video that Kanye posted where he just said Nino Blue, and Nino was this young man who's a rapper who was homeless at the time due to circumstances that had happened. And it just seemed like Kanye giving him a shout out on the street, and they kind of got to talk. But there was a whole day where they spent together in the studio, actually, as Nino was a rapper, had met Kanye before, and they actually got to talk. Nino got to work on Yandhi, and that story had never really been able to be told because as Nino went to talk to various radio outlets, none wanted to hear the full day's story, right? So this is really the first time you get to hear the details of Nino being in the studio with Kanye and what that experience was like for him, what led to that, what the aftermath of that has been. And it's really cool. It's a very engaging episode. So if you've never listened to our podcast, only watch the YouTube videos, this is a great place to start. And if you're only going to listen to one episode, I would say listen to this one because you're going to get a lot of great Kanye insight. Nino's very engaging and endearing, and his storytelling ability is top notch. So please give that a listen. You can find it on iTunes, Spotify, anywhere where you listen to podcasts. And I guess that does it for this 42-minute video. Thank you very much. If you're enjoying the channel and you want to support, the easiest ways are to like and subscribe. YouTube appreciates that, and they'll go, hey, this content is worthwhile. They'll show it to more people. We get a few more cents, I guess, from the monetization for every like and subscription. So much appreciated. And then if you have any requested content, go ahead and leave a comment, and I'll get to it at some point. See ya.